Okay, I'll just start by just talking about my work. Of course, I'm an artist, a curator and an art historian. I come from a long line of artists. My grandfather was a traditional sculptor of repute in Onitsha, where I'm from. And of course, my father is celebrated as one of Africa's greatest pioneer modern artists. And so it's three generations of artists, and I'm hoping that I can make good on my background and the achievements. And I'm having a show in May at the Mall Galleries. And these are some of the pieces that I think that might show. Of course, I'm having difficulty, making my final selection. This one, for instance, is one of three in a series, of my mask on the Benin heroine, Idia. And of course, just like we know all over the world, she's being commemorated with this mask, and which has gained even more prominence as the symbol of Festac 77. And she was a great warrior queen, and her son Obaisige, she was very supportive in expanding the kingdom and making sure that they got good conquest in wars. You can see the symbol of the leopard. I mean, in Benin, the leopard is a symbol of greatness, and I've used elements like that to situate her within that context. So this is my contemporary interpretation of her, and behind you see the plaques, just like in the palace before the sack of the kingdom in 1897, and still today you see emblems of their history, and that's what African history is all about, a way of preserving our history and those that have achieved and come before us. My paintings and my work in general celebrates black excellence. I'm all for ensuring that black people find their place internationally and on the global scene. And we want to be judged by the merits of what we do, and not necessarily by, the color of our skin, the texture of our hair, or the color of our eyes. And so my work champions that. I was speaking earlier about the series, and this is the second painting in the series. Again, you see Queen Idia, my interpretation of Queen Idia, and how I think, she would look if she lived today. And of course, in the background, you see, she's coming from a past, and I'm celebrating her in a contemporary sense. Well, there's still some more pieces here. This is my series of The Belle of Senegal. I started it in 1998, and I've made many in the same series. So it was first, I got the inspiration from a great African-American historian called Louise Jefferson. And I find that African women have that sway, that sense of flamboyance, and the history of clothes and how, clothes even for the African woman, were a way of asserting herself, especially in pre-colonial times, it was a way of asserting her independence, a sense of rebellion, because the African woman in those days were suppressed. And you still see vestiges of that in contemporary society. Lagos, for instance, is a very commercial city, is one of the largest cities in Africa. And every weekend you see women gaily dressed. And for me, that's the way, that Africans have been able to assert themselves through textile, through dance, through fashion. You see a lot of that. That sense of community. You have the Owambe parties where, people dress the same way, and families dress the same way. There's a sense of bringing people together, in unison. Now, this is going to be a very difficult choice. I mentioned earlier that it's a series I started way back in 1998, and here for me is the crescendo, in the sense that I think this is my highest achievement within the series. But then again, I'm having a bit of a dilemma trying to select which particular one would actually go into the show. Now, currently, many of my friends and those close to me would prefer the one on the right. They have the feeling that they talk about the fact that the eyes follow you around the room. They like a sense of style, and even if you're not seeing her feet, she's, I think her face is a little, for many, more striking than this one here, where she could be looking just anywhere, but her eyes don't necessarily follow you around the room. There's more virtuoso brushwork on this one, that's why I thought this might be the one. But then again, there's just something about the eyes in the other woman that seems to draw people in, and sort of unfinished look as well, which makes it look exceedingly spontaneous. So it's a difficult choice for me, Well, let's see how things go and what happens and, which one tips the scale at the end. Okay, I have a few more pieces in the back at the back of these paintings. This is an interesting one. I'm still working on this. This one, sort of documents, the events of the Igbo landing when African slaves were taken to the West, and in rebellion, they decided that they wouldn't be taken into captivity, but they'd rather drown in the water. But the legend has it that these slaves, they didn't exactly drown, but they were taken home. And you see some of the slaves that I have in the foreground there, that they flew into the atmosphere, and they were taken home by a goddess, an African goddess, who was a goddess of the water. But with my own artistic license, I have made her the sun god, which Enwonwu, which is the Igbo sun god, and the Enwonwu is a sculpture that my father created in promotion of world peace. It was Nigeria's gift to the United Nations, where it stands still today. It's a promotion of world peace as African countries were gaining independence, beginning with Ghana in 1957. And so for me, in having a conversation with my father, which is the subject of the exhibition we're having in London, as joint exhibition, I've taken the Enwonwu, which is easily one of his most famous pieces, by virtue of the fact is that it also stands at the United Nations headquarters in New York. I've taken that piece and it's appearing, I'm borrowing it and it's appearing in some of my works as a conversation I'm having with my father as well. And for many all over the world, and art historians, curators, and collectors alike, it's a symbol of world peace and emancipation. I think this is definitely coming with me to the exhibition. It's definitely going to be, because I think that it's a historical piece and it serves to, it's a means of identifying, Africans, and the means of, furthering their agitations and furthering their objectives and goals. Okay, I have some political work here, which I think might be interesting. Again, Enwonwu appears in the background, and here you see vestiges of our colonial past, and then you see vestiges of the military dictatorship in Nigeria and even in Africa, and again you see the present time. Women here, how they're trying to forge their way. I mean, women for a long time, have been fighting to get their place. When you talk about gender equality agitations. This is an interesting one, which might be selected. It's one of a series of 4 paintings that I've painted of the Queen of Ife, Ronke Ademulu. She's now married to the present Oni of Ife. And it's very interesting because it's that sense of continuing conversation. My father painted 3 paintings of our auntie, Tutu Ademulu, and it's one of his most famous works. And then here I am, my father's son, painting Tutu's niece, Ronke, from the royal family, the princess as well. And so it's a continuing conversation. And I think that's what the stuff of the exhibition is made of, that continuing legacy. I mentioned earlier that I come from a line of 3 artists, and 3 generations of artists, from beginning with my grandfather to my father, and then to myself. Okay, here we have the Abogombo masquerade from Onitsha, and you see the movement, the dance, which I'm trying to capture. Again, it's something my father popularized, in his paintings. He had been painting masquerades from 1949 to 1994, but here I'm doing it in a different way. You see that my masquerades are sort of elevated, and it adds a sense of an increased spiritual dimension to it. For me, the masquerade is the epitome of art, in the sense that it combines sculpture in the mask, it combines paintings, combines costume, combines performance, dance, and if you look closely, you can imagine that is dancing to a drum beat. So in many ways, it also embraces music. The masquerades are believed to be our ancestors, and they come out on festive occasions, because in Africa we believe that we exist, in the physical world and the spiritual at the same time, and the masquerades inhabit that space between the physical and the spiritual. And this painting speaks to the transformative nature of the mask. And once the physical person, a man or a woman, adorns a mask, that person is elevated to a higher level straight away, and that person, becomes some sort of spiritual entity, and is representative of our masquerades. And we in Africa, we gave a lot of credence to our ancestral past. We believe that we cannot go forward without embracing our history, our past. And that's really what Africa is all about. It's a continent, that is so rich with experiences from colonialism to the history of military coup d'etats, and yet we've still been able to maintain, our own and keep, to our roots. And then you can see that manifest in our way of life and our values. So this is what I've been trying to say in my art. It's about embracing modernity on our own terms, still remaining true to our roots, and forging our future directions and a sustainable future for our generations that are still yet to come. This portrait is of a friend of mine, but I like this painting, and I asked her to sit for me because of the richness of her black skin. I say a lot about black women in my work, and you can see the rich tones, the texture of her hair. So I thought to make an interesting painting, particularly, as it aligns very well to my discourse. Okay, these are some other pieces. I just offer a sneak peek. It would be lovely for the viewers to come to the exhibition themselves to actually see the works. That's Ronke again. I spoke of her earlier, the Queen. This is one of my favorites. I've done two in a pair, but again, that sense of style. I play with the volume of the boo-boo, so you can imagine with the wind blowing and lifting her up and all of that. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and I think this would make the show. I'm in between two of the major pieces. This one is titled "If God Were to Be a Woman," and it's this conversation that I'm having with Pablo Picasso, who is easily, the most influential artist of the 20th century. But I feel, that he didn't give much credence to Africa. And in that painting, Demoiselle d'Avignon, he painted African women, and the models were prostitutes, and they were depicted in grotesque fashion. And I feel that it denigrates women in many ways. And so for me, this is a way to celebrate women, black women that he so denigrated. And you see them in all their charm in this painting. They're not looked upon as sexualized objects or, objectified, but they're proud. Their nudity for me, just as in Africa, in parts of Africa, especially in Nigeria where I'm from, it's a way of protesting. So for me, I'm turning the narrative, I'm seizing the narrative in this work, I'm challenging what Picasso did in that very famous work, and I'm sort of putting in a different perspective, a different context, that these are women that should be appreciated. And of course, again, the mask, but in this sense, the mask appears, and aligns with my thrust in the sense that I'm trying to elevate their status from the status of prostitutes that were depicted in Picasso's earlier work. But in Africa, the mask, is transformative in nature, and it elevates, the person who is adorning that mask into a higher realm, because we believe that, we coexist in both the spiritual and the physical world. And so the mask for me is hugely transformative. And so I'm contextualizing the function, of the mask in this painting. And so this painting essentially celebrates black women, celebrates black people all over the world. That's what I'm trying to say in this painting. But again, I'm using, the Picasso's work, which for me is a very controversial painting, using the same tools in which, the denigration was achieved to, actually challenge, that thrust. So that's what this work is about. Now, this painting will definitely be at the Mall Galleries in the exhibition later next month.